Tonight on Primetime, the U.S. sinks deeper into debt, now surpassing $40 trillion, as Washington shows no signs of slowing the tide. Can the Trump administration throw the economy a lifeline before the nation is pulled under? Welcome to Primetime. I'm James Ezimoha. Now, Washington's debt has crossed the $40 trillion mark for the first time, putting the scale of U.S. borrowing in focus. The record also comes as rising interest costs add to the pressure on the government's finances.
The United States national debt has surpassed $40 trillion for the first time, drawing fresh warnings that a fiscal crisis is brewing. It comes as costs balloon for social safety net programs and interest payments far outstrip revenues held back by tax cuts. The milestone comes just 5 months after the debt crossed $39 trillion, highlighting the rapid pace of government borrowing. Data from the U.S. Treasury Department shows the outstanding balance is $40.047 trillion, which includes more than $32 trillion held by the public and nearly $7.8 trillion in intra-governmental debt. Interest payments are now among the largest federal expenses, with the Peter G. Peterson Foundation warning they are becoming a growing burden.
Interest is our fastest growing government program. So we spend more than $3 billion a day on interest costs. We spend more on interest than we do on national defense. We'll spend $16 trillion on interest over the next 10 years.
The amount owed has more than doubled since 2017, with pandemic-era borrowing accounting for a significant share of the increase. Budget watchdogs warn that continued borrowing could fuel inflation, limit government spending priorities, and raise costs for households. The Peterson Foundation says changes to spending and tax policy could help reduce deficits without immediate drastic cuts.
It's a huge problem, it's an urgent priority, but we actually do know how to fix it, and we have the ability to fix it. So it's just a matter of the political courage and political will to get things started.
The record debt adds to pressure on lawmakers to put federal finances on a more sustainable path.
Now, Istanbul is expected to host the next meeting of the Regional 4 foreign ministers later this month, as Turkey seeks closer coordination on Middle East security. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has invited his Pakistani counterpart to join the talks. The group also includes Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Adam Moro has more from Istanbul.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has invited Ishak Dar, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, to Istanbul for a possible meeting of the Regional 4, or R4, group of foreign ministers. According to Pakistan's Foreign Office, the invitation was extended in a Wednesday telephone call in which the two top diplomats also discussed joint efforts to promote regional peace and stability. Dar accepted the invitation and confirmed that he would attend the meeting, which Pakistan says is expected to take place in Istanbul later this month. Ankara, however, has yet to announce an exact date for the tentative meeting. The R4, which includes Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, has emerged as a regular consultation mechanism on Middle Eastern security issues. The four foreign ministers last met in Amman, Jordan, on August 5th on the sidelines of a ministerial gathering focused on Jerusalem. At that meeting, they reaffirmed support for an independent Palestinian state based on pre-1967 borders, while stressing the need for enhanced diplomatic coordination to prevent further regional escalation. In June, the group held its fourth formal meeting in Cairo, where talks focused on de-escalation and efforts to achieve regional stability. The possible upcoming meeting in Istanbul would come as the four countries deepen coordination on regional security challenges, including the ongoing conflict between Iran and the United States. Fidan has described the four-country platform as an increasingly important regional mechanism. The meeting would also come shortly after Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan signed a landmark joint defense pact in Mecca adding a key security aspect to relations between 3 of the 4 R4 members. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
All right, let's talk to Kaiser Nawab, chairman of the Belt and Road Initiative for Sustainable Development. Join us from Islamabad, Pakistan. Good to have you now.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, now the R4 has now become a regular forum for Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. How important could this group become as these countries take a bigger role in regional security?
Thank you again for having me on this important topic. The R4 is in fact a very not so new, but that was discussed previously in Egypt as well during the last meeting where the 4 foreign ministers held a meeting with each other. And I think after this Makkah agreement, it becoming more effectively a bloc, or you can say a group of brotherly countries with having a unique regional powers and dynamics. Well, we are seeing that Pakistan itself is a very pragmatic power in South Asia, while Turkey itself is a part of the NATO as well as having a huge defense capabilities. And then we see Saudi Arabia itself as a major influence in the Arab world. And of course, the Arab Republic of Egypt, while located at the Red Sea, and then uh, to the Gaza, is also having a great importance. So I think these 4 countries, while making the regional four, is potentially the diplomatic complement to the recent defense pact as well, which held on August 7th in Makkah. So I believe that not only this is a diplomatic, this is a security pact, but it's more like a diplomatic pact as well.
Now, these 4 countries have different strengths and different relationships across the region. Now, where could their combined influence make the biggest difference to regional stability?
So first of all, I think there can be major 3 possible outcomes for all from all of the stakeholders of this R group. The first one can be a common diplomatic position, which ultimately uh, will have a coordinated position on the regional conflicts and also the ceasefires, and also not only these two, but the humanitarian issues as well as the de-escalation. And I think rather than like each country pursuing separate diplomatic track, they could speak with greater collective weight while speaking on R4. Uh, Further, I think the second outcome can be, which is also related to the crisis, is a regional crisis management system. Pakistan has credibility of that with several other major stakeholders. And Turkey, as I explained, has significant diplomatic and military weight. Saudi Arabia again has a good influence in the Gulf world, including Arab as well. So Egypt itself, due to its geography, as explained earlier. So I think that can be more coordinated response and more diplomatic in response to any crisis like this. Uh, I think Istanbul will be succeeded, and it's already succeeded in making it more institutionalized, and making it more, in the form of a multilateral international platform.
Now, Turkey and Pakistan are also closely linked with Azerbaijan. Could these growing partnerships bring the Gulf and the South Caucasus closer together?
I think this is a very important point to mention here. Not only Azerbaijan, of course, Azerbaijan is the brother country of both Turkey and Pakistan, but the both countries have strong relations with the whole Central Asia. Pakistan is a very good friendships with all other Central Asian countries, of course, Azerbaijan on the top, and similarly for Turkey itself as well. So this R4 can be later on extended, I think, is in observatory groups to other Central Asian countries. Azerbaijan probably, in my opinion, will be the first one to join that as well, in a one form or another form. But I believe that it has a greater importance to these friendly and brotherly countries who has also several pacts, not only diplomatic, but including the defense as well. So I think this is very important for Azerbaijan itself as well.
Now, you mentioned this before, but I'd like us to go back there. Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia have also signed the Mecca Defense Agreement. How influential could that pact become in the region?
I mean, this pact is more like a deterrence pact. It's a defensive pact. It's not uh, something that is against any country or any region. It was really very effective when we have seen the recent regional crisis in the form of Iran and U.S. war, where we have seen Pakistan's role as well. And Pakistan being having such a defensive pact was very much clear to follow that with and our army and our support was already deployed within Saudi Arabia, particularly the Air Force. And I think that was a strong message of Pakistan's commitment and, of course, Saudi Arabia trust on Pakistan. And then that's probably one of the reason where this Makkah agreement successfully held after that bilateral defense pact between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia.
Now, with tensions around Iran still shaping the region, could the R4 become a useful channel for dialogue when relations between the major powers are under strain?
So there can be a two question that either that will be a powerful platform for dialogue, or either it can be considered by some stakeholder as an anti-Iran alliance as well. But personally, I believe that I would not characterize it as an anti-Iran alliance, but particularly I would say that Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia have all emphasized the defensive character of the Makkah agreement, and now this R4 itself as well. So I think the wiser interpretation is that these countries want greater strategic autonomy and deterrence in highly unstable region. Uh, it will also give an opportunity to Iran itself to solve their problems with the support of R4. And I believe that R4 since have their own personal and the regional uh, benefits as well, particularly when there will be a stable environment because we have I mean a huge border sharing with Iran, and the other countries itself are sharing their borders through either water or through somewhere or another way. And I think this R4 can be a great influential group, or you can say a bloc to support Iran to stabilize and to solve their issues through dialogues and diplomacy.
Now, speaking about a stable environment, the US is still the main outside security power in the region. Could stronger cooperation among these countries then give them more room to act independently of Washington?
I mean, U.S. Is a very different characteristic when it comes to their own actions. One cannot analyze, and that's too deep to analyze the U.S. behavior or the character after particularly such blocks. We have seen the U.S. when there was NATO, which is a huge block, especially it's a defensive block, and we have seen some, and in other ways as well. While U.S. has been recently too much, you can say, was explored their the way of their behavior when they have the alliances, especially when they were in the Gulf and the Gulf was left alone. So I think the U.S. Personality at or characteristic at this level are very, and one cannot comment on that. But this block itself can be a greater ally on the U.S. to solve their issues as well, particularly related to the international law and norms.
Let's go back to the Alpha for a second. Now, how important is public support and people to people connectivity to making this kind of regional cooperation sustainable?
So Pakistan and Turkey are very deep friends. Even my personal travel to Turkey, we have people loving Pakistan. They are sing the Pakistani national anthem and different slogan inside the spoke. Similarly, with Saudi Arabia being brother country, being host of the holy mosques, and Makkah itself has a great ties uh, with Pakistan, and this is mutual. And similarly with Egypt, and we have a very strong support and help U.S. with previous several countries in the Egypt, and this all trust practice mutually from not only Pakistani side but from these all three countries side as well. And I think this can be a greater opportunity for not only a diplomatic or defense kind of cooperation, but of course people to people as well. Pakistan is a huge population, especially a young population, talented population, and we have a huge youth bulge where Saudi Arabia lacks a lot of human resource, and I think Pakistan is his like Saudi Arabia already hosting a huge number of Pakistani diaspora. Similarly, Turkey itself becoming a hub, and now in the next coming years can be the Dubai of Singapore of Europe, where Pakistanis have already bought a lot of human lands and nationalities, and there is a lot of Pakistani diaspora as well. So this is I mean a great opportunity for the peoples to people, businesses to business. Energy crisis can also be energy cooperation can be discussed, and I think the current era is the era of the AI technology, and Pakistan and Turkey itself are champions of technology in their own regions, and I think Pakistani's talent and Turkey talent they can. So, of course, help the Saudi Arabia and Egypt itself. These countries, if working together on that side, can also explore greater opportunity for their people as well. Recently, after the Makkah agreement, what we have seen among the public sentiments was like strongly affected, and the public was in strongly support, especially in Pakistan, on their roads, on their cars, and on their even their private buildings and their private celebrations. The social media that was supporting the pact and that was appreciating the leadership of Pakistan, particularly the military leadership, which is under the chief of army staff and the current General Asim Munir, and of course the prime minister itself as well. And of course, and if you have ever visited Pakistan, you will see the photos of Mohammed bin Salman and the leadership of Turkey, the Burdagan Excellency on the trucks and on the roads and on several Pakistan Turkey flags on private cars of the people. This means that we have actually strong relationship with them as well. From people to people, people like watching Turkish drama, and in Turkey, Pakistan, Turkey, the Turkish people like watching Pakistani movies as well. So and the dramas as well. So I mean, we do have similar cooperation with each other. The only thing is that that's the time to improve it. It's the time to make it to more bring it to grassroots level and to the people to people and culture to culture connectivity.
Thank you. That was Kaiser Nawab, Chairman, Belt and Road Initiative for Sustainable Development, joining us from Islamabad, Pakistan. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time. Now, Iranian officials have met Iraqi leaders in Baghdad, with regional conflicts and ties between the two countries high on the agenda. Iraqi President Nizar Ahmadi called for dialogue and diplomacy to help end the region's conflicts. Turaj Shivalilu has more from Tehran.
Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf met his Iraqi counterpart as well as senior Iraqi officials during the first leg of his two-day visit to Baghdad. Before leaving Tehran on Wednesday, Ghalibaf said the talks would focus on strengthening bilateral relations and discussing regional developments. He also expressed hope that Iran and Iraq could contribute to shaping a new regional order without foreign involvement. According to Iranian state media, Ghalibaf and his Iraqi counterpart discussed accelerating work on the Shalamcha-Basra railway link and dredging the Arvand Rud waterway, which forms part of the Iran-Iraq border. Iraq's parliament speaker reportedly called for a special treatment for Iraqi oil exports passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Ghalibaf also held talks with Iraq's president and prime minister, stressing closer cooperation between Tehran and Baghdad on regional security and stability. Iran and Iraq fought an 8-year war from 1980 to 1988. Relations have since improved, with the two countries developing extensive political, economic, and security ties. Tehran also provided support to Baghdad in its campaign against ISIS after the group seized large parts of Iraqi territory. The current visit is expected to further discussions on infrastructure, trade, and regional cooperation between the two neighbors. Turash Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
German investigators have made a second arrest over the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. The Ukrainian suspect has been detained in Croatia under a European arrest warrant, accused of allegedly helping plant the explosives in 2022. Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where Germany makes another major breakthrough in the investigation into the Nord Stream sabotage. A second Ukrainian suspect was arrested over the 2022 explosions that severely damaged the Nord Stream gas pipelines beneath the Baltic Sea. German prosecutors identify him as Vladimir Zuravlyov, a trained scuba diver arrested in Croatia under a European warrant. They allege he was part of a team that rented a yacht in Germany and planted explosives on the pipelines near the Danish island of Bornholm. But this is not Zuravlyov's first arrest. He was actually detained in Poland last year, only for a Polish court to reject Germany's extradition request, with the judge arguing that if Ukraine was responsible, the attack could be considered a legitimate act of war. The other suspect, former Ukrainian military officer Sergei Kuznetsov, was arrested in Italy and extradited to Germany. Prosecutors accuse him of leading the operation, but he denies responsibility. The blast ruptured 3 of Nord Stream's 4 pipelines. Initial suspicion focused on Russia before evidence began pointing toward possible Ukrainian involvement. Kyiv has repeatedly denied any role. The pipelines have long divided Europe. Germany championed Nord Stream as a source of Russian gas, while Poland, Ukraine, and the U.S. warned it left Berlin dangerously dependent on Moscow. German prosecutors believe the aim of the sabotage was to permanently cut those gas links and deny Moscow future energy revenues. And the case now carries an uncomfortable political dimension. Germany pursuing allegations of Ukrainian involvement in an attack on its energy infrastructure, even as Berlin remains one of Kyiv's most important supporters. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Now, Kyrgyzstan, China, and Russia are now Georgia's leading export markets, according to the latest trade figures. The data also points to Tbilisi's growing importance along the Middle Corridor. Nini Nikolashvili reports on Tbilisi.
The headline number: Kyrgyzstan is now Georgia's largest single export market at $521 million, ahead of China and Russia. That's not random. It reflects the Middle Corridor, the route moving goods from Central Asia and China through Georgia and the South Caucasus toward Europe, bypassing both Russia and Iran. As global trade reroutes around sanctions and instability, Georgia is positioning itself as a transit and re-export hub. And these expert figures suggest that strategy is gaining real traction. But the same data holds a harder story. Russia is Georgia's third largest export destination and second largest trading partner overall, with turnover of $1.8 billion. That's substantial economic cooperation with a country Georgia has had no formal diplomatic ties with since 2008. And it comes as Tbilisi's relationship with the EU and US remains strained over democratic backsliding concerns and Georgia's own geopolitical alignment. Beyond partners, overall trade turnover climbed to $15.5 billion, up 7.5%, driven largely by a 21.6% jump in exports. Cars and oil products dominate trade in both directions. Together, the figures paint a picture of a country economically pulled in multiple directions at once, chasing middle corridor opportunity while staying commercially close to Russia. The trade numbers, in that sense, tell a foreign policy story as much as an economic one. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan are setting a new trade target of $1 billion by 2030, while working on steps to attract more investment and expand business cooperation. Severa Japova reports from Tashkent.
Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan are preparing a program aimed at increasing bilateral trade to $1 billion by 2030. The target was discussed during a meeting between Uzbekistan's Investment, Industry and Trade Minister Laziz Kudratov and Azerbaijan's ambassador to Uzbekistan Rashad Mamadov. Trade between the two countries reached $307 million in 2025. Up nearly 15% from the previous year. In the first half of 2026, turnover rose by more than 30% year-on-year, reaching $170 million. The growth has been driven by increasingly diversified trade, ranging from food products and manufactured goods to vehicles, machinery, and industrial materials. Azerbaijan also plays an important role as a transport link, connecting Uzbekistan with the South Caucasus and European markets through the Caspian Sea. The sides are now preparing a roadmap to implement existing agreements and expand trade and investment cooperation. They are also looking to strengthen direct links between businesses and regions in both countries. With trade already showing strong growth, Tashkent and Baku are now seeking to turn this momentum into long-term economic cooperation and reach the $1 billion trade target by 2030. Cyril Vajap reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Now the countdown to Kazakhstan's parliamentary election is entering its final stage, with parties stepping up their efforts to win the votes. Campaigning will end ahead of Sunday's poll. Farzeh Kalimuziner has more from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is heading into a parliamentary election that will look very different from previous votes. The election on August 23rd will be the first held under the country's new constitution, approved in a referendum in March and in force since July 1st. The parliamentary system has changed significantly. The former two-chamber parliament made up of the Senate and the Majlis has been replaced by a unicameral parliament known as the Kurultai with 145 seats. For voters, the key change is how those seats will be filled. All members will now be elected through party lists with no single-member districts. And under this new system, 7 parties are contesting the election. Together, they have nominated 545 candidates, including 172 women. The average age is just over 45. Among them, the main newcomer is Adilet. It was registered in June, becoming the first new party to secure registration in 3 years. But the biggest political development came when Amanat, formerly Nurotan, and the country's dominant political force for decades, merged with Adilet. And it's not only the party landscape that is changing. The new parliamentary structure also means there will be one speaker instead of 2, a position likely to carry greater influence. The election will be observed by 777 international monitors from 42 countries and 13 international organizations. And in just 3 days, voters will cast their ballots for one of 7 parties or choose the against all option. The vote will determine the first composition of Kazakhstan's new Kurultai. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Now, a new push to strengthen Pakistan-Syria ties is underway in Islamabad, with Syrian officials meeting Pakistan's leadership. The visit comes as Damascus faces fresh pressure across the region. Miriam Zia reports from Islamabad.
Pakistan is reaffirming its support for Syria as the two countries look to strengthen bilateral ties. Syrian Foreign Minister Asad Hassan al-Shaybani arrived in Islamabad on Wednesday for a 2-day visit. Today, he held talks with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. The Foreign Office described the meeting as warm and constructive. The two sides discussed expanding bilateral cooperation. They also held in-depth discussions on regional developments. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called for stronger cooperation in politics, defense, trade, investment, education, and human resources. The talks come a day after Pakistan condemned an Israeli attack on Syria's Abu al-Dohar airbase. The Foreign Office described the attack as unprovoked and a flagrant violation of international law. It warned that such actions could further undermine regional peace and stability. During today's talk, Pakistan also reaffirmed its support for Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. That gives the visit a wider diplomatic significance. Pakistan is engaging directly with Syria's new leadership while making clear where it stands on Syria's sovereignty. The challenge now is to turn that political engagement into deeper bilateral cooperation at a time when Syria remains at the center of wider regional tensions. Mariam Zia, A News, Islamabad.
All right, we'll be back after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Primetime. Now, the standoff over the Strait of Hormuz is now spilling into a wider economic fight, with Donald Trump warning of action against those maintaining trade links with Iran. In a Truth Social post, he said Tehran had failed to take up an opportunity for a deal.
US President Donald Trump has threatened what he called tremendous economic consequences for any country that helps Iran or continues doing business with the country. In a Truth Social post, Trump announced what he described as the most crushing economic operation ever imposed on a country, saying Tehran had failed to reach a deal with Washington. Trump said the US still had additional sanctions it could impose. He also described the naval blockade extremely effective, while saying the Strait of Hormuz remained open despite Tehran saying it was shut. He added that it could become less important as alternative energy supplies expand.
It'll either be extremely good and oil prices are going to drop like a rock, or we'll continue to do exactly what we're doing. You know, they were talking about $350 a barrel, and it's today $84, $85. And we are getting a lot of oil out. But the other thing that's happened is people have found other alternatives, which they never thought about. Texas, Alaska, Louisiana, and other places.
Trump also warned that countries allowing banks, businesses, airports, or government entities to support Iran could face economic penalties. The warning comes after a 60-day ceasefire expired on Monday. Tehran said it's now gone from a defensive to a fully offensive military posture after Trump said he wouldn't renew the pause in fighting. Iran's central bank governor also said Washington had not yet released frozen Iranian funds required under a memorandum of understanding between the two sides. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates has announced it is cutting financial and economic ties with Iran, while Iraq has urged that its economic interests and particular circumstances be taken into account. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz showed no increase on Wednesday as US-Iran diplomatic efforts remained deadlocked. The conflict has disrupted a vital global energy route, contributing to higher oil and gas prices.
Now, Israel's military is facing new scrutiny over its handling of alleged misconduct in Gaza. It has opened criminal investigations into 2 cases, but says no one will be prosecuted over the killing of 7 aid workers.
Israel's military has announced its first criminal investigations into the role its troops may have played in the deaths of 5-year-old Hind Rajab and her family, as well as 15 Palestinian paramedics, all killed in Gaza. Separately, the military said it would not pursue investigations into 3 other attacks, which killed aid workers from World Central Kitchen and Doctors Without Borders in 2024 and 2025. One of the workers was an Australian national. On Thursday, Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong summoned Israel's ambassador, condemning the decision not to pursue a criminal case.
Well, I think we have an Australian humanitarian worker who was killed, not on the first strike, but in the context of 3 separate strikes on a humanitarian convoy. I mean, obviously this is a difficult time in the relationship. We've made our views clear about this issue. We've made our views clear about other issues. You've seen the Netanyahu government's response to some of those. I think we are realistic about that.
Israel's military, meanwhile, has said the attacks targeted Hamas and Hezbollah militants.
Circumstances, conditional aspects led the soldiers at the time to believe that this convoy had been taken over and controlled by Hamas, and they opened fire. Now, it was a mistake in retrospect, but the findings of the court are that there was no criminal intention, there was no intention to hit at aid workers, and therefore there's no criminal responsibility.
The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says Gaza has remained one of the world's deadliest places for aid workers for 3 consecutive years.
Now, the death toll from a 7.4 magnitude earthquake in Western Colombia has risen to 314, according to the National Unit for Data Risk Management. Authorities say hundreds remain missing and more than 4,400 have been injured, while hundreds have been rescued from the rubble. More than 262,000 people have been affected, with tens of thousands of homes destroyed. Search and rescue operations are continuing as authorities assess the damage. The quake struck 10 days ago near San Jose de Palma in the Choco region, making it the strongest seismic event to hit the country this century. At least 16 people have been killed and dozens injured in a Russian overnight air assault on Kyiv and nearby areas. Ukraine says civilian sites were hit and is calling for stronger air defenses, while Moscow says its forces targeted military facilities.
A day of mourning has been declared for Friday in Ukraine after at least a dozen people were killed in a large-scale Russian missile and drone attack overnight in Kyiv and the surrounding area. That's according to the capital's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko. Officials say more than 40 others were injured. Ukrainian authorities said the strikes damaged apartment buildings, warehouses, a school and a children's hospital across several districts of the capital. The country's air force said Russia launched dozens of hypersonic missiles, including ballistic, and 168 drones. Officials said many were intercepted, but ballistic ones remained a major challenge. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has renewed calls for Western allies to provide more air defense missiles, particularly Patriot interceptors, saying shortages are leaving the capital vulnerable to ballistic attacks. Russia's defense ministry said the latest strikes targeted military facilities, including sites producing drone components, a military depot and a logistics hub. Separately, Russia and Ukraine exchanged 103 prisoners each in a United Arab Emirates mediated swap, with the released Russian servicemen transferred to Belarus for medical assistance.
Latvia and Lithuania are stepping up efforts to counter what they see as growing Russian hybrid threats, from arson to migrant networks. Latvia's Prime Minister Andris Kozbergs says recent incidents form part of Russia's hybrid warfare against countries back in Ukraine, while Estonia is probing a possible Russian role in an arson attack linked to Miriam Robotics. Meanwhile, Lithuania has logged about 1,900 cases of secondary migration this year, with Latvia's Operation Werewolf targeting migrant smuggling networks.
Lithuania counts that it's...
Now, Poland has scrambled military aircraft and placed its air defense and radar systems on heightened readiness amid the increased attacks on Ukraine. Warsaw says necessary forces are and resources had been activated in response to Russian long-range aviation activity. The aerial standby lasted for over 3 hours, standing down around 6:30 a.m. on Thursday morning. The military added that the operations were preventive, aimed at securing airspace and protecting citizens along the border with Ukraine. Now, migrants left in makeshift camps in Ceuta are being offered places in government shelters as Spanish authorities try to ease the pressure from last month's border crisis. The voluntary move comes after thousands were stranded and local residents stepped in to help.
For the past 3 weeks, the sands of El Trampoline Beach have served as a sprawling makeshift home. But on Thursday, the encampment was peacefully cleared. Escorted by police, hundreds of migrants gathered their belongings and walked to newly opened government shelters. The voluntary transfers aim to provide basic living conditions for those who have been sleeping rough since crossing the border en masse in late July. An estimated 8,000 migrants remain in Ceuta, with the city's official resources heavily overstretched. The burden of care has often fallen on locals. In the El Príncipe neighborhood, residents transformed a basketball court into a tented camp for women and children. Supported by the Red Cross, the community has provided food, water, and mattresses. But aid workers warn this grassroots effort is unsustainable.
It would be good news for them to be sent to better places and for this camp to be taken down. This is largely being run by the Neighbourhood Association, whose members are exhausted because they have taken on a responsibility that should not fall to them.
The temporary shelters now opened by Spain's Migration Ministry are designed to relieve that local exhaustion, offering a combined capacity of up to 1,800 beds. But while the relocation takes hundreds off the streets, thousands more remain in limbo, waiting in the enclave for a chance to continue their journey to continental Europe.
Now, Turkey has said it is ready to work with Damascus to search for oil and gas in Syria. Speaking in the Syrian capital, Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar said Turkish state oil company and private companies are prepared to carry out seismic surveys and exploration drilling, both offshore and onshore. Bayraktar also announced that Turkey and Syria will soon commission new infrastructure that will nearly triple electricity transmission to more than 800 megawatts. The two countries also signed a memorandum of understanding on phosphate resources. Meanwhile, Israel has warned it will not tolerate any Turkish military presence in Syria that it considers a threat to its own security. The latest exchange has further deepened tensions between the two regional powers. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued the warning after Israeli strikes hit the Abu Dhabi or Abu Daho airbase in northern Syria, hours after a Turkish delegation had visited the facility. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz accused President Erdogan of dragging Turkey into what it called dangerous adventures in Syria. He warned him against testing Israel's determination to defend itself. Turkey rejected Israel's claims as unfounded and accused Netanyahu of trying to justify strikes on Syrian territory. Officials from former Belgian colonies and the United Nations are gathering in Baku to discuss Belgium's colonial past and calls for reparations. Representatives from Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo say the effect of that history can still be felt today.
As we know, most of our countries are still struggling with the legacies of colonization, Belgian colonialism. And now it is 100 years later, 101 years later, and it's what we are commemorating, and it's good to reflect on the role of this period, and which should inform our current relations with these former colonies.
Voilà, je suis heureux de participer à la
If Baku, thousands of kilometers away from the DRC, is thinking about the victims of colonization, how much more should we, the descendants of those ancestors who experienced these degrading treatments firsthand, be concerned about it? I believe participating in this initiative also means bringing this history back to the surface, a history that seems to have been suppressed by those who harmed the Congolese people. I find this extremely important, and I congratulate the organizers.
And finally, the World Robotic Conference has opened in Beijing. Robot martial arts and dance performers have attracted particular attention at the event. Experts attending the conference have highlighted China's rapid advances in the field.
The 2026 World Robot Conference has opened in Beijing. More than 300 Chinese and international companies are taking part in this year's event, showcasing more than 3,000 new robotics technologies and innovative products.
The robot dance, very interesting. I think the technology is advancing quite a bit, as we saw in the marathon, and each year that I come to WRC, I see new advancements. I'm very impressed by what I see that Beijing is doing, and throughout China, there's a lot of adoption of robotics.
The opening ceremony also featured a special performance by robots demonstrating martial arts, which attracted considerable interest from visitors.
I'm a fifth time here, but every year I see an enormous progress. I mean, robotics is making major progress. It's amazing to see this.
China continues to make significant advances in robotics each year and is now considered one of the global leaders in the field.
All right, it's been a pleasure bringing you Primetime tonight. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.